What is up, Packers fans? Welcome into Happy Hour. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Of course, you can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Excited to be back chatting Packers football with you. We are about to hit the dead zone, the doldrums of the NFL offseason, the real only like 5-week period all year long that there's not a ton of stuff actually going on in the NFL calendar. And again, more often than not, no news is good news during that time. But per usual, we'll have you covered here on the Pack-A-Day Podcast, 365 days a year, covering all things and getting you ready for training camp, preseason, the regular season, and beyond. Again, appreciate you guys being here today. Quick shout out today to the one and only Elijah Herman, 8 years old today. Happy birthday to my youngest son. Cannot believe he's 8 years old already. So happy birthday to him. But we're going to get to all of your Packers questions over the course of the next hour or so. Like I said, I will get to as many as humanly possible. I see there's a lot of questions already in the chat. My apologies yesterday. The live Q&A following camp or mini camp yesterday, there was the big outage that was going on and unfortunately affected StreamYard as well, which did not allow me to do the live show. So my apologies for that, but happy to be here for Happy Hour today. Let's get things started right freaking away. John says, happy Friday. Don't forget to hit that like. Appreciate that, John. Looks like we've got Mike McGee saying happy birthday. Appreciate that, Mike. I cannot believe he's 8 years old already. The crazy thing is that his birthday right around then coincides with, it was probably a few months before then that I reached out to Jersey Al at Cheesehead TV to start writing for Cheesehead TV. Probably a couple thousand followers on Twitter, maybe at the time. I think I had already been done writing for Titletown Sound Off. Had not really been doing anything Packers related. So it's always interesting to look at like him aging, of thinking about 8 years ago was right when I started doing anything to a higher level of Packer stuff, which is again where I started writing for Cheesehead TV. And then obviously from there started the podcast and credentialed through Packer Report and everything like that. So it's been a wild journey, and more of a wild journey having an 8-year-old, that is for sure. All right, Richard, let's say Luigi's Pizza comes up to you and wants to create a limited time Andy Herman pizza. What toppings, ingredients would be on the Andy Herman? Richard, true story. I have pitched to them, and there has been, or at least there was some conversation at one point in time about a Pack-A-Day pizza. I don't think it's on the forefront at the moment. I don't think there's anything that is going to come to fruition with it at this point in time, but I'm still definitely going to push for it. I do very much want a Pack-A-Day pizza. It's a really interesting question. Because a lot of my favorite pizzas, they already have versions of, thankfully. It would definitely be something with extra cheese. That's for sure. So we're going extra cheese. And then I think, I would love to do something with basil. I don't think basil is going to carry over well into the frozen pizza sphere, but I would love to do something with basil. It's for sure going to have onions. I know that much. So I'm thinking maybe like a pepperoni, onion, and basil pizza, something like that. If basil would work for a frozen pizza as the Pack-A-Day pizza, it would probably be something, and then extra cheese, of course. But it might just be like a extra cheese and something pizza. I don't know yet, but we'll do some thinking on it. We'll do some brainstorming. Also, I will say this: my new favorite pizza. Maybe I'll do this actually, and I'm going to shout out Rustique Pizza here for a second, because Rustique Pizza in Green Bay now has, or in Howard technically now has, my favorite. I'll read it to you here because it might have to be a version of this, because I could probably go and get it almost every single day. It is the Angry Bee Pizza. It is mozzarella, Parmesan, provolone, and manchego cheese drizzled with hot honey and hot chili oil. And it is awesome. It is so freaking good. You've got the creaminess of the cheese, the normal, obviously, Pomodoro sauce or whatever red sauce that they use. And then the bite from the honey and the chili oil. It is awesome. It's my new favorite thing. So maybe something like that as well. You briefly touched on this the other day, but was curious if you could elaborate on how a quarterback with Tim Boyle's college stat line actually forged a career as a backup. Have people talked about how crazy it is that I've never seen any real explanation? In college, was he just raw and a bad decision maker, or was he incredibly unlucky with tip balls and such? Has to be both, I'd think. For those of you who don't know, Tim Boyle's college stats are one of the more remarkable things that you have ever seen. In his first year in college at UConn, he was a top high school prospect, goes to Connecticut. So we're not talking about like some D3 school here. Goes to Connecticut, goes 59 of 133, a 44.4% completion percentage, 0 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He comes back for his sophomore year at UConn, plays another 9 games, goes in that he barely gets much playing time though. So 43 of 82, 52.4% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. And then for as a junior at Connecticut, goes 31 of 60, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He plays 3 years at UConn with a passer completion percentage of 48.4%, throws 1 touchdown, 13 interceptions. That's his resume at UConn. He did play at a college after that. I forget which one it was off the top of my head. But he did play a Eastern Kentucky. So he did play for Eastern Kentucky as well. Eastern Kentucky, I don't think I have his stats, but anyway, I digress. His college stat line was just beyond atrocious. So I remember Green Bay picks him up as an undrafted free agent. I go out there and I look at his stats and I'm like, what? I'm sorry, what? It's worth noting that he was a top high school quarterback prospect. Like he was a big time college recruit. So you go and you watch him on tape in college and the arm was legit. Like obviously the decision making and throwing into coverage and the accuracy was something that needed a lot of work. But we're talking like legit QB1 sort of arm talent stuff. And listen, and you're looking at, I forget what his height weight stuff was. He is 6'4", 233. So, I mean, you're from a prototypical quarterback standpoint, top high school prospect, 6'4", 233 with a laser rocket arm. Okay. The laser show is a real thing. When you are a thrower of a football that has the ideal profile of a quarterback, and he's not like the most mobile guy in the world, but he's not a stiff quarterback either. So a little bit of mobility, 6'4", 233 with a laser arm, you're just going to get chances, right? So Green Bay, I thought, was really, really smart, despite this god-awful box score profile for Tim Boyle, to just bring him in, undrafted free agent, no harm, no foul. And I always tell the story of that very first day at minicamp when I was there. The very first time he's there with Hunley, who had started the entire previous season, Deshaun Kaiser, who had started the previous entire season for the Browns, and of course, Aaron Rodgers. And he just had no fear in the world, was out there slinging it, and he had that sort of gunslinger mentality. And I loved the attitude. And he has made now when did he come out here? He was so he's 30 years old now. He started with the Packers in 2018. In 2025, he is right now on the Tennessee Titans and has, been on the Packers, Lions, Bears, Jets, Texans, Dolphins, Giants, and Titans. He's a great immaculate grid quarterback out of nowhere if you want some low percentage ones, right? But he's made it. And now his NFL profile, right, is not super great. By the way, at Eastern Kentucky, even when he went to a lower level, he had 11 touchdowns, 13 interceptions at Eastern Kentucky. So in college, 12 picks, 12 touchdowns, 26 interceptions. And in the NFL, he's got 5 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. So this has been somebody that's continued to struggle. He made it. He made it into a 8-year NFL career, making multiple millions of dollars as a backup quarterback out of one of the worst box score quarterback profiles that you have ever seen in your entire life. I think the other thing that probably serves Tim well is he's kind of reached that veteran status where, you kind of know what you're getting. He's not trying to push for a starting job. And he, by all accounts, he seems to be somebody that everyone kind of gets along with very well in the locker room and everything like that. So he's kind of a nice number 3 quarterback to just have on your roster. And again, can run everything. He's a veteran at this point. He's got the arm talent. He's never going to obviously at this point turn himself into a starter or anything like that. But that's how he goes from one of the worst box scores ever into now like a 7 to 8 year career in the NFL. So kudos to him. He did it. And it's kind of a cool story when you think about it. All right, we've got another idea from John. I'm moving the Jair cap hit earlier. The brass wanted to reduce speculation about Hendrickson trade, Ramsey trade, etc. Not that those things couldn't happen anyway. Throwing stuff out. Yeah, I don't see that. Again, they still have the money to do anything like that. I still have yet to find anyone that has anything remotely of interest that I can get behind as to why they would do it. But I'll say it one more time. If Russ Ball and company went out of their way to do it, they clearly had a reason and probably was advantageous for the Packers in some way. What's your guess on Colby Wooden's actual weight, big enough for a nose tackle? I'm going to guess like 308, something in that range. and probably big enough to be a little bit more of a run stuffer if he can get his technique down. I don't think we're talking about a 330 guy. There's just very few of those guys anymore that even the NFL is like super interested in, unless you've got a lot of juice behind it. But he looks bigger. He looks stronger to me. And now it's just going to come down to technique. And if he can hold up against double teams when need be up at the line of scrimmage and be a little bit more of a run stuffer. So I'm not necessarily concerned at him being underweight at this point. He seems to have the mass needed to play it. Now it's just, again, how does the technique work moving forward? What's your opinion on the escalation of the Stewart-Cincinnati issues? Did we dodge a bullet not drafting Stewart, or is this strictly Cincinnati offering a whack rookie contract? Ben, my initial reaction to this through the entirety has been that the Bengals are just continuously idiots with this stuff. Joe Goodberry, who covers the Bengals very, very well, seems pretty adamant that what the Bengals are asking him is about what 20 some other teams in the NFL have asked of their rookies and have received contracts on. What you sort of get in this interesting no man's land with is the Bengals are asking Shamar Stewart as a first round pick to sign a clause in the contract that has never been signed by a Bengals first round pick before, is my understanding of it. Meanwhile, the Bengals are also asking Shamar Stewart to sign a clause in the contract that 20 some other first round picks have already signed off on or are going to sign off on. I can't speak to that for sure, but from per Joe Goodberry, who does a really good job of covering the Bengals, that seems to kind of be the crux of this situation. So from the Bengals standpoint, they can kind of point to it and be like, guys, this isn't that big of a deal. Like, more than half the league is doing this exact same thing. And for Shamar Stewart, he can point to, you've never done this before with the first round pick. Why are you doing it now? And it just seems to be at this impasse. Almost any other team, not almost, like the Browns, I would still be, what the hell are you doing? And whatever. Almost any other team, I would give the benefit of the doubt and be like, yeah, it's probably just this weird thing. And maybe it's a little bit more on Shamar Stewart. With the Bengals, man, you got the Hendrickson situation. You just released Jermaine Pratt. They do a bunch of weird stuff with their contracts. It's really difficult for me to give them the benefit of the doubt. My guess is if this was a Green Bay situation, they would have been able to get something done by this point. If I'm the Bengals, you spent the first round pick on the dude, just like get him signed. Again, if this is not something that you've done for first round picks in the past, it's just, I don't know. To me, it's way more important to your franchise to get that guy in and starting to work on the, his football technique and everything like that, than haggling over some stuff that probably doesn't even come to fruition. And if you were that worried about it, why the hell are you spending a first round pick on him in the first place? So, if you told me that this was like the Rams, I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe Shamar Stewart is the one that's in the wrong here. Maybe still is. But when it comes to the Bengals, I have very little forgiveness for them because they've done so many stupid things in the past that I tend to just, my auto default is up, more Bengals doing Bengals things. But to be totally clear, I'd have to look at it into greater detail. And I just know my default assumption was that the Bengals were probably the ones in the wrong. But per Joe Goodberry, again, who does a very good job covering the team, it sounds like it's a little bit more 50-50 than maybe what we've been led on to believe at this point. Mike Brown is tired of putting money he may not have in escrow. I really hope he sits out the year and goes back to the draft. Really a shameful stance to take. And it doesn't seem like that's totally it. But again, I've not covered it in great detail, so I don't want to speak too far out of my mouth without knowing the full details of everything. But again, my default here, Mike McGee, is usually that the Bengals are doing something very stupid. In my opinion, it's a whack contract, which reminds me, we left Cincinnati out of the worst front office convo. If they didn't get lucky getting Burrow and Chase, they'd be a last place team still. Listen, they've done some good things. They've done some really bad things. And they're just kind of in that no man's land because you get some really good players in Burrow and Chase, and they're going to lead you, but it's going to be tough to get to the promised land when you have a front office that at times is very incompetent. Happy Friday, Andy. Thanks for the great coverage this week. Excited to see what gems you have in store for the dead period coming up. I'll temper my Hardman making the 53 excitement till camp. Go Pack, go. Listen, he's off to a great start. He certainly looks the part and has had a really nice start to camp. He looks like he belongs with that unit. Again, having Love connect with him on a 74-yard pass is a good sign as well. And it just feels like he has that veteran mentality, right? Like he's very comfortable in everything that he's doing, understands the concepts and the routes and everything. So it's off to a really good start. But again, he's going to have some competition with Bo Melton as well as Malik Heath, who also are good off to good starts. Cornelius Johnson out of nowhere. I don't know that he's going to be able to get himself quite in that conversation, but it's going to be a very competitive situation at wide receiver for sure. I'm going to go 4 interceptions for Xavier McKinney, Luke. I think we saw in the second half of last year, teams were pretty hesitant to throw in his direction almost at all. So I think he'll get some, just in general, because he's that type of playmaker. And at some point, the ball's going to find him. But I do think teams are getting very hesitant to throw in his direction. And I would expect that to continue. And let me just say, that's a weapon in and of itself. If you're a quarterback and you see Xavier McKinney patrolling the back end and you are like, I don't want to throw it because Xavier McKinney's back there, that's a good thing in general. You're not giving up big plays then because you're not willing to throw it downfield because Xavier McKinney's down there somewhere. That fear factor is a big thing also. So it's a good thing no matter what, if that's the case. But I do think it's a little bit less because teams are hesitant to throw in his direction. Since he wants to be the Cowboys so badly but lack the resources, Jerry Jones can put up $1 billion and be fine. Bengals should have extended Chase and Higgins immediately to save money. Probably waited a little bit too long, but kudos to them. At least they did get it done. Am I the only one who would feel bittersweet with a Super Bowl victory? I really enjoy listening and thinking about the future of the pack. Of course, I'd be thrilled the day finally came, but slightly sad the days of looking into the future were over. I'll get... all right, so you have another one after that. Here's the beautiful thing, Cora. You do not have to worry about this. Think of like the Philadelphia Eagles, right? They won the Super Bowl, and a day later, everyone's already talking about free agency. So yes, we would take the time as soon as the Super Bowl is won to celebrate that Super Bowl and to enjoy the parade and all of that stuff that surrounds Green Bay winning the Super Bowl in that situation. And then you immediately are going to turn that page and start looking into what coaches did the Packers lose? Is Jeff Hafley getting a new head coaching job? So you need a new defensive coordinator, and you still have a draft coming up in a couple months. What free agents are you going to lose from that Super Bowl team, and which ones are you going to prioritize to keep? And what free agents can you bring in to make that back-to-back Super Bowl run, which has been so elusive for teams over the last decade or so? So I think all of those things are going to be still very, very fun. There's always a future. And as soon as that championship is won, you take about a week or two maybe to enjoy it, and then you're right back on the horse of looking forward to the future as well and trying to kind of stave off that drop off that so many teams have once they win the Super Bowl, and then looking as to how you can keep that window open for additional championship opportunities. So, and life comes at you fast, right? We all thought Aaron Rodgers won that first Super Bowl and it was going to be gravy train for the foreseeable future, and there's going to be at least 2 or 3 more Super Bowl at least opportunities in his future. Never came to fruition, never got back to one. So you never know when that one's going to be your opportunity. And it could close very quickly after that, or it could be a longer close, but you just never get back to that promised land. So trust me when I say as soon as it's accomplished, that next goal comes very, very quickly. And we start immediately looking ahead to that next opportunity for Green Bay. If the Packers had deals on the table for Hendrickson and Watt with new contracts and compensation being the exact same, but they could only get one, who would you take? This might be controversial. It would pretty easily be Trey Hendrickson. I actually think TJ Watt's getting pretty beat up at this stage of his career, and I don't know that he's going to be able to play many full seasons from here on out. We also saw JJ Watt, retire, I think, relatively young. He still had certainly seasons left that he could have played. I could see TJ doing something similar. So I feel better about the next 3 to 4 year projection for Trey Hendrickson than I do for TJ Watt at this point. And I love TJ Watt. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's been one of my favorite players to watch really since he came into the league, and even as a Badger before that. But I think if I were betting on which player has the better career for the next 3 to 4 years, I think I would bet pretty easily on Trey Hendrickson in that scenario. Even if I think TJ Watt's been the better player over the last 5, 6, 7 years or so, I would go with Hendrickson in this situation. Of all of our wide receivers, which one do you think is, just before we get to that, I'm actually curious. TJ Watt is 30 years old. Trey Hendrickson is 30 years old. And all right, so Watt turns 31 in October. Hendrickson turns 31 in December. So, all right, that's where we're at. I'm taking Hendrickson. Sorry, I missed your last one, J Money. Out of all our wide receivers, which one do you think is likely to be wide receiver, and which receiver is most likely to get 1,000 yards? Which one do you think is most likely? Do you mean wide receiver one? I think they're all going to stay wide receivers, even Bo Melton, who also will maybe play some corner. I don't think there's going to be a wide receiver one, quote unquote. I would say the most likely to get 1,000-yard season is Jaden Reed. I still think he has the best opportunity. I still think he has the most defined role, and I still think he's going to be a big-time playmaker. So yeah, that's where I think things are at right now. If you had to pick a wide receiver personally to keep on the 53 out of Hardman, Heath, and Melton, who would you pick stylistically? It's a really good question. I'm a Bo Melton believer. I believe in Bo. This would be one, J Money, where I really want to see how this plays out in camp, because to me, it probably comes down to Hardman or Melton, although I do like Malik Heath as well. If Hardman wins the punt return job, I would lean him. If he doesn't, I would lean Bo Melton with his flexibility, and or if Melton can just, I guess if Melton's good enough to be the number 5 or like 5 or 6 corner or 4 or 5 corner, whatever you want to define him as, I might just move him to corner full-time, and not full-time per se, but like as a primary corner, and keep him as a quote unquote corner on the roster. And then, kind of go from there. So I'm going to lean, I might lean Melton just a little bit, but either one. And I really want to see it play out in training camp, to be honest. And I would not rule out Heath either. Say it depends on how well Melton does at corner. I'm not disagreeing with that at all, Ben. I think that's very apropos. Jair gone. How pivotal is it that Nate Hobbs has a big year? And are you confident he can go from guarding guys like Sutton, Rice, McConkey to Jettis, Amon-Ra, DJ Moore, Jordan Addison, etc.? I want to be clear again on this. I think all of these corners can be very good zone corners, and I think they're more than capable of it. I think this is going to be a very unique defense. Guys flying around the field, amoeba-like, lining up in different spots, both pre and post snap, changing the picture post snap. I think these guys are going to be all over the place. And I think they have guys like Nixon, Evan Williams, Xavier McKinney, Javon Bullard, Nate Hobbs, Carrington Valentine, amongst others, even, Katano Ladapo, Zane Anderson to an extent. And we'll see if some of these other corners can get in the conversation as well. But I think they've got a lot of players who can play that style of defense. And I think it's going to be very confusing and disorienting for opposing quarterbacks. I'm less concerned about any of these guys getting matched up one-on-one with Justin Jefferson, because these guys are going to be playing spots more than they're going to be playing man. And I think we saw it last year. This team did not give up 100-yard receivers. Almost ever. And I thought they did great against the Eagles in the passing game standpoint this past year. And I think Nate Hobbs is going to be a huge upgrade from Eric Stokes. So I'm in general, and I know I might be in the minority here, I'm in general excited to see what this secondary as a whole looks like. I still believe that this is going to come down to so much more the pass rush than it is going to be the defensive backs. If the pass rush is getting there legitimately and is a, better version of what they were than a season ago, this defense is going to be really good. I really, truly believe that. If it continues to be a problem, especially against top teams, then at some point, I don't care what corners you have out there, but it's probably going to be a problem. So that's where I'm at. And I legitimately think they have the corners necessary to play the system that they're going to play. I would like a little bit more depth, but I'm willing to see what Haddon, King, Robinson, and these guys can become before paying too much that they don't have enough depth, because I do like those guys getting an opportunity. All right. Dennis, Cornelius Johnson was drafted by his college coach and released quickly. Did the light come on, and how often does that really happen? Yeah, a couple things. He was a 7th round pick. I'm not concerned about who the coach was or anything like that. When you're a 7th round pick, especially back to the 7th round, and especially last year, where last year's 7th round was considered a early version of undrafted free agency because it was a weaker draft, I'm not so concerned about who was released and, by what team or by what coach or anything like that. Yeah, that's not abnormal at that point in the draft. I also would not jump to too many conclusions on Cornelius Johnson yet. I think he's battling it out with guys like Julian Hicks and whoever doesn't make the roster at wide receiver for a practice squad spot, more than he's fighting for a 53-man spot at this point. So I'm not getting too ahead of myself as far as Cornelius Johnson excitement goes. And then as far as the light bulb going off, we've seen this with a variety of different players in the past. And sometimes it's year 1, sometimes it's year 2, year 3, year 4. Everyone develops at a different pace. And I think the other thing that you have to be noteworthy of here too, some players in their first year, like Kenny Clark, are 20 years old. And some people in their first year now, especially with the way things are 25, 26 years old. Like there's a difference between a first year 20-year-old and a first year 25-year-old. So Cornelius Johnson's 24. Is it possible that he could feel much more comfortable in year 2? Absolutely. So again, I wouldn't get too far ahead of ourselves here with what Cornelius Johnson can become, but it definitely could be where he's playing much better and much more comfortable. Sometimes it's a scheme thing. Sometimes it's a culture thing. Doesn't even necessarily have to do with the receiver. You get into a scheme that fits you a little bit better, or a culture that maybe is a little bit more open to you, the way that you play or your style or whatever, and it just clicks. So maybe that's the way with Cornelius Johnson, but let's see what he can do in camp and preseason before we jump to too many conclusions. Hello, fellow believer. Is Bolton our Travis Hunter at home? No, I'm not. And I know you're saying that in jest, obviously, Dylan, but again, this is another one where let's take it one step at a time. These are great, fun conversations in June for June 13th, right? Talking about Bo Melton playing different sides of the ball, talking about Cornelius Johnson having a really nice mini camp. Really fun things to discuss. Taylor Elgersma ripping a couple balls yesterday. You guys know I live for this stuff. I love this stuff. But all of those guys have a long ways to go before they're in any sort of impact Green Bay Packer territory. So one step at a time. I mean, specifically with Bo Melton, that defense. But I'm excited about Bo, and I'm really intrigued to see what he can do with it in training camp and in preseason. I'm going to be overjoyed when I see number 80 out there on defense in preseason. It's going to be a lot of fun. So very, very curious, very intrigued by what can happen from here. All right. Yes, we talked about that. Yes, McCollum special teams also big. Heath as a blocker, totally agree with that as well. Like those are the big things, right? You have Heath the blocker, Hardman the returner, Melton the Swiss Army knife. And do you want the returner, the blocker, the Swiss Army knife? They all give you different versions of styles of wide receiver. So again, the style could come into play there as well. But that's why I think that battle is so really fun and intriguing, is to see which one of those three, because they're so different than one another. They're nothing alike. And that just makes it very unique as a roster battle. Happy birthday. Appreciate that from Ben and from Mike. Let's see. Thanks from J Money as well. Appreciate you guys. What do you think is the likelihood that we get a rematch of the 2010 Super Bowl between the Packers and the Steelers? I mean, less than 1%. I would love it. It'd be so fun. Rodgers versus Love, Rodgers versus the Packers, Super Bowl, Packers, Steelers would be a really, really fun Super Bowl. No question about it. The Packers are, one of, like the 6th or 7th likely team in the NFC. Maybe it's a little bit better than that, like 4th or 5th best team in the NFC from an odds standpoint. The Steelers are like 10th or probably like 8th or 9th, somewhere in there. Like it's just not super high from a probability standpoint. But hey, if it happens, it would be a ton of fun. And we're due for one of those like storyline Super Bowls, right? And maybe it's Green Bay, Pittsburgh. That would certainly be one hell of a storyline Super Bowl. Want to see this team be great from the jump and stay hot? Yeah, I mean, I will still take being hot at the end rather than at the beginning. But if you're going to add that caveat that they get to stay hot through the entirety of the year, I would also like to see a team go 20-0 or whatever. Yeah, 20-0 at this point. So you can definitely sign me up for that as well, Taylor. But again, I think there is value and there is importance in adversity through a season. I think you have to lose a couple games. And Philly certainly did not lose a bunch last year, but I think the losses that they did sustain were important to what they ultimately became and figuring out where their weaknesses are. I think you want to see those weaknesses out there so that you can correct them before you get to the playoffs, because once you get to the playoffs, they're going to be magnified to a very large extent. So I think it's very important that you go through some adversity. I think it's very important that you have a few losses on your resume to figure out what those weaknesses are and what you need to improve upon. But obviously the big way to get there is, if not having that first round bye, at least having a home game for a couple games, because it's very difficult to go on the road game after game after game to get to the Super Bowl and then have a neutral game from there, especially with how road game driven the back end of the Packers schedule is. Man, if they could get a home field advantage and win the North, that would be massive for Green Bay this upcoming season, and really any season. Ben's rooting for Packers Bills Super Bowl. That'd be a fun one as well. Have we not considered the possibility that the Packers, in their attempt to get a bigger offensive line, may let Zach Tom walk in free agency or franchise and trade him? Griffin, more on that to come. I'm just going to say that. I may or may not have an episode with something similar talking about that, Griffin. I like the way that your mind is working. My mind has put some similar things together. We may talk about that sometime in the near future. A little teaser there. Off-season show idea. Andy fixes the NFL. Your suggestions for schedule, rule changes, salary cap, whatever. That'd be a fun one. I would love to do that. We'll see if I maybe get to that at some point. Might be a members only kind of idea, but I do like the idea quite a bit. Pretty much happy with anyone representing the AFC outside of KC. Fair enough, Ben. Elijah was a good luck charm. Yes, he very much is. He is a very lucky kid overall. Like I would love to bring him to a casino. I feel like he would just tear it up. He just has that level of luck with him. So yeah, very, very much so. I still need to find a way to try Carry the G. Yep, very good beer from Cheesehead TV. So if you haven't tried it yet, make sure to do so. The reason the Eagles signed Dylan, the tush push. You've got the quads, Hurts, Saquon, and AJ. I talked about this with, I don't know if it was Justice the other day, or maybe, no, it may have been Paul Brettel on the sidelines. But yeah, you add that unbelievable offensive line with Jalen Hurts and his crazy quads, with Saquon Barkley and AJ Dillon pushing behind him. Yeah, that tush push might go for 70 yards every time at this point. But you've definitely got some beef to do the tush push with Dillon and Barkley in the backfield. That's for sure. Any chance Jair explores the market and sees Green Bay's offer as the best chance for him to put himself in the best position for free agency in 2026? Doesn't seem like it. Per Jair's dad, it sounded like they were pretty upset with the offer that Green Bay, this was on social media, with the offer that Green Bay was putting out there. If that's true, and again, who knows, right? But if that's true, I think the way to read this sincerely is that Green Bay never really wanted Jair back. I think that if that is the case, that Green Bay completely lowballed Jair, they just didn't have any interest. They were trying to sell it as if he could come back at some point. And there's still a piece of me that believes a lot of these reports that came out were in an effort to drum trade interest and try anything they could as a desperate last attempt to move on from him. This, again, I don't want to have main character syndrome here or anything. It's not about me. Who the frick cares? Nobody cares, right? There's legitimately a reason at the time why I felt like it was a 0.01% chance that Jair was going to come back. And for a while, I felt like I was like I needed to go back and review it, right? Because that's why I put that whole article together of like looking back at the entire thing. Guys, every time anyone in the organization talked about it, it was as clear as day that they had turned the page and moved on. I mean, to a T, from Jeff Hafley, who never says anything like that, Brian Gutekunst, Matt LaFleur, it was as clear as day. Jair, when he talked in the locker room, or didn't talk in the locker room, maybe more appropriately, the suspension stuff in the past, like there was not one morsel, one cookie crumb of thought or belief that really he would be coming back, other than the fact that I would have never said never, and you never know what's going to happen in this business. I wholeheartedly believe that Green Bay made the determination extremely early on, as soon as basically the end of the season, that they were moving on from Jair. And I believe that everything from, the rumors that they were still in good terms with Jair and that they were willing to renegotiate his contract and all of those sort of things, it felt to me like that was one last gasp attempt to say, hey, come trade for this guy. And just to say like, hey, maybe we're going to keep him. Maybe we're going to keep him. We just offered him a new contract restructure. He might accept. If you want in this, you better come trade for him right now. And then they didn't get anything. And then finally made the determination to release. My guess here is that they were ever in the Jair business. And if that is true from Jair's dad, if it is true that they completely lowballed him, it just is even a more sign that, like, sure, we'll take you for nothing if you want to play for nothing, but we know you're going to say no, and we're ready to move on. So let's just get this thing over with. And they ultimately released them. So I don't, as much as the, reports were out there, I'm not saying any of the reports were wrong, by the way, but as much as those reports were out there, I almost feel like that was like, again, that one last attempt to try to get trade value. And then once they didn't, they moved on. I think they were done with Jair from the word go and tried to play this charade out to try to get trade compensation and just didn't. So they moved on. And I would be beyond stunned. I'm going to give it the old 0.00% that Jair is back in Green Bay in any capacity. Let's see. Again, yeah, I don't think Green Bay would entertain it at this point. Popped in here during the cheese talk. Best live ever. Welcome, Shane. Always good to have cheese talk on the Pack a Day podcast here. Feel like Isaiah Simmons is going to have a breakout year now that he is focused on only one position instead of three. I love the idea, Ben. I love what they're doing with him. And listen, you watch him, he's a freak. I mean, he is a freak. Like, I've talked about it before, But if all 90 Packers that are on the roster are lined up on the fence and you're just picking team, like two people who had no idea, right? Just no idea who any of these guys were. And you're just going and picking off the fence. There's no way Isaiah Simmons isn't going in the top 5. Like, and again, if even if you ran like a combine, right, you got to see all these guys work out and things like that. I still think Isaiah Simmons is going in the top 5. So he has all of the talent in the world. Now, I will be clear. The tape's not fun. The tape's not great. There's some fun stuff on tape, no question about it. He will flash some stuff that makes you go, oh, I see it. That's amazing. But there's a lot of dips in that as well. And it ends up being more of a net negative than it has been a net positive. I love the idea. Let's master him at one thing rather than try to do all these different things with him. I think it's a good theory. I'm more going to take the I'll believe it when I see it approach, but I don't think it's impossible. And at some point, you're so freaking talented. And I think for Isaiah Simmons, he's probably starting to recognize now too, he barely got to play this past year. He's on his third team, and he needs to figure this out. If he wants to make it in this league and get one more big paycheck, this is probably his opportunity. If it doesn't work out with Green Bay, he might get one or two more like 1 year vet minimum type of deals, right? But any chance of him getting one more big contract is out the window. He goes out and gets an opportunity to start this year and tears it up. He's going to probably get like a Zach Bond type of, if he had a Zach Bond type of year, I'm not expecting that, but like he could still get that, right? Like he could get a Zach Bond type contract if he went out and had a Zach Bond type of year. And, anything like he could still get like a 3-year 30 if he had a really good year this year at worst, right? So this is his opportunity. I love how they're focusing him and getting him engaged in one specific spot. And we'll see if he can respond to it. I'm very intrigued. If nothing else, he's going to be a really, really, really good special teams player, I believe. Give me 1 second here. All right. Sorry about that. All right. Let's see. Bet Tim Boyle fell off his couch when the Packers called him. I don't know. But it's a really cool story overall. All right, we're going to get to Ben at 3:06 here in just a moment. Mike had a super chat. Thank you for that, Mike. I was done with Jair when he said we're going to play defense. Listen, Jair is a polarizing figure. I get it. There were a lot of moments that I loved with Jair. There were some moments that made you go just like, oh, what are we doing? Can we just, focus on the task at hand sort of thing? Both of my kids have Jair jerseys. There's been a lot of very fun moments with Jair. I don't think, to me, the eccentric or the stuff like that played as much of a role in this as just him not being able to stay healthy. And that's the unfortunate part. I wish we could have seen a David Bakhtiari career fully healthy. Nick Collins, Jair Alexander, Jermichael Finley, Terrence Murphy, Jonathan Franklin. We can go on and on, right? Like, it's just a really unfortunate aspect of the game where you get some of these injuries, Sterling Sharp for that matter, that just are so debilitating. And with Jair, it's just been such a huge part of the last 4 years for him is just not being able to stay on the field. And I think that's ultimately what the decision was. But I do understand that he is definitely a polarizing figure to some. Mark my words. Future storyline that will be revisited will be how Hafley unlocked Isaiah Simmons. If anyone can, it might just be Jeff Hafley. Would not stun me at all. Let's get back to Ben here. Where did it go? All right. What cheese is your go-to on subs? Mine is either provolone or sharp cheddar. Very much depends on the sub. If it's Italian, definitely provolone. I do like pepper jack from time to time. Certain ones, definitely cheddar, but it just depends on the sub type for sure. So yeah, that's a tough one to answer because it's going to be a different cheese depending on the type of sub that I'm eating. But usual go-tos are somewhere between pepper jack, cheddar, Colby jack, and then provolone would be probably the top ones. Injuries affecting performance in 2024, leading to expected improvements for 2025 are being discussed along the defensive front. Could Valentine's preseason injury put him in a similar camp? Maybe. Definitely maybe. I like what I've seen out of Carrington Valentine so far. I really have. I think he's ready to play. He's not lacking in confidence. I know that much. And hopefully he's in for a really big year this year. But I know Green Bay really likes him. And I know Valentine is very confident in his own abilities. Hopefully this is the year that he really breaks out. He's a very talented football player. I think the more people watch him play, the more that they're going to love him. But he hasn't had the ability to make some of those big plays yet, or hasn't had the opportunity. I think you're going to start seeing some big plays from Carrington Valentine. He very much has that within him. We just haven't seen it in games yet. I think we're going to start to this year. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. Wes loved to call Boyle laser show Tim Boyle. Very much. I think everyone loved to say that. Is it likely with Jair's release that Micah Robinson and even eventually or potentially Jonathan Baldwin could see significant snaps during the duration of the season, especially with injuries? I don't think I'm ready to go that far yet. First of all, Jonathan Baldwin's at safety right now. So he is practicing both individual drills as well as team drills at safety. So definitely not Jonathan Baldwin in that scenario. And then as far as like corner, I think Kamal Haddon, Kalen King, Micah Robinson are going to fight for that kind of next man up. There's 4 guys in front of them that are going to play, right? Your 3 corners, Hobbs, Nixon, and Valentine, and then Javon Bullard as well. And then one of those guys is going to be the number 5. And you're going to need probably an injury or 2 to get to that point. I would put Kamal Haddon in the leader of that clubhouse right now, but Micah Robinson, Kalen King, maybe others could get involved in that conversation as well. If they don't perform, then we could see maybe Green Bay add somebody else either at waivers or right before that with a trade, just to kind of bolster that group just a little bit. But for now, I would put Kamal Haddon as the leader in that clubhouse. Do you think it would make sense for both the Packers and Christian Watson to sign a 1-year extension? Gives Watson some security as he works to come back, and the Packers may lock him up for an extra year. I think it probably makes sense for both sides to see what this looks like when he comes back from his injury. I think if you're Green Bay, you want to see him get out there on the field and see what he looks like before you're gambling on next year. And I think if you're Christian Watson, you've worked so insanely hard to get to the point where you're going to be able to come back midway through the year, that settling for a 1-year, small deal right now is probably not what's in his best interest either. I do think that if Christian Watson comes back for those last handful of games and plays well, not great, but well, I do think there could be a situation where a 1-year extension is really what makes sense for both sides. Green Bay gets a really good wide receiver on a little bit of a discounted price because of the injuries and because he's familiar with the offense. Christian Watson decides to come back thinking that his best opportunity, knowing the offense, is in Green Bay to make that one more big season before he gets a big contract on the open market. I could see that happening, but I don't necessarily think it happens before he comes back, just because I think both sides are going to want to see. If Christian Watson goes and tears it up, he's going to probably get paid pretty significantly by some other team on the open market. And if he struggles, then for Green Bay, they probably don't want to really, maybe be in that business either. And they probably want to see what they have in Golden and Savion Williams, Wicks, Reed, all those guys before they are maybe making too much of a commitment to Christian Watson at this point. Haven't seen anything out of Telford in minicamp because, again, there's no real offensive line or defensive line play in minicamp, so not really going to glean anything from that. Telford is a guy that I liked coming out as an undrafted free agent, more specifically just really good size and strength, and I kind of liked his profile overall. I thought as a rookie, just kind of getting it through the practice squad his first year was good. And then last year had the opportunity on the 53, got a couple spot, opportunities here and there. Didn't think he looked great, but I thought, he kind of looked as like a, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, probably 8th, 9th, 10th offensive lineman. But we'll see what he can do in year 3. And I'll be keeping an eye on him, obviously, in training camp as time goes on. Who would you say is the most underrated player on the team? I'd say Emmanuel Wilson. Emmanuel Wilson's a really fun back. I've said before, I think he has the opportunity to be a really, really good back in this league if he can kind of just put it together and gets an opportunity to do so. But I really like Emmanuel. I might go with somebody like Jordan Morgan, where people are already calling a bust for some reason. I think he's going to be a really solid starting offensive lineman for a long time for Green Bay. I'm still pretty overall bullish on what I think he can become as a starter. So I think that potentially one at the moment. Javon Bullard's another one where people want to seem to jump to the conclusion that this guy's also a bust. Thought he got put in some tough positions this past year, specifically going between slot and safety, even within the same game at times. I think you got to kind of get him locked in a little bit more, but I think he's going to be a really good player too, or at least has the ability to be. Even Tyron Hopper is a 3rd-round pick. Again, people want to, and again, I did not like the 3rd-round pick for Hopper. I thought it was a little bit over aggressive, but I think there's a little bit something there too. Again, I'm not willing to say he's underrated until he actually does something. But I think there's some draft picks last year that are getting slept on a little bit that maybe people aren't talking about in a positive light enough. I'm excited to see what they can do this year for sure. Who do you think is the most overrated? Rashawn Gary's an interesting conversation that I think in the same breath, he might be one of the most underrated and overrated players at the same time. I think there's a subset of fans that think he's like this unbelievable defensive end, and I don't think he is. And I think there's another subset of fans that think he sucks, and I don't think he is. I think he's just a really good really good defensive end. But I won't use that one. Overrated. Trying to think. The one that I usually have used in the past is Ben Elton Jenkins, just in the fact that I think Elton Jenkins is really good. I think he's really good. I think every team, all 32, would love to have that guy. I think he's more than worthy of the contract. I think he's been a unbelievable second round pick. I love having him on the team. I cannot say enough positive things about him overall. I think his versatility has been massive. I think there's a lot of people that just view Elton Jenkins as like this, no doubt, like Pro Bowl / all pro caliber guard. And I've just never seen him that way. I just think he's really, really good. And that's not like, that sounds, I think, sometimes negative or anything like that. It's not like, that's a really hard level to achieve and get to. I think he's in that conversation. Like, I think he's just a really great guard, but never quite. I know he's made the Pro Bowl and things like that, but I don't think he's that caliber. I don't think he's in like the top 5 of guards in the NFL. I think sometimes people put him in that conversation, and I just don't necessarily see that. I think he's just really good. He's probably in like the top 10 to 15 of guards. And like, you need guys like that, right? But I just don't think he's in that upper echelon. So I usually use that as an example. I guess I'll probably just go with that one for right now. Saw a lot of muff punts last year. Who do you think the leader is in the punt return clubhouse? I think Mecole Hardman and Matthew Golden are going to have a really good opportunity to earn that spot this year. We'll see what it comes up to in camp and preseason, but keep an eye on Hardman and Golden, excuse me. Would you like to see CV put on more weight to help his tackling issues in exchange for some of his flexibility? I think he's put on a little bit of muscle. I'm cool with where he's at. I think he just needs to work on his technique from a tackling standpoint. So not necessarily putting on more weight. I don't want him any less fleet of foot or anything like that. I do want him to wrap up a little bit better, go low a little bit better, and make sure that he's getting guys to the ground. Since we're talking about Shamar Stewart, since Jair's gone, if Belton doesn't pan out, we'll look back and wish we would have gotten Trey Amos. I just think you have to take the Trey Amos conversation and just kind of flush it, if I'm being totally honest. It's come out that Trey Amos had a pretty significant injury that a lot of teams were concerned about. I think you just have to consider that Green Bay was very worried about that injury. And I've talked about this before, and I'll just say it one more time. Every single time you take an offensive lineman like Anthony Belton, like Jordan Morgan, any of these guys, right? Like when you're taking an offensive linemen go earlier than what their normal draft position would stay. If you're looking at the consensus draft board or whatever the case may be, at some point you just have to take your medicine. Would it have been cool last year to take, Cooper DeJean instead of Jordan Morgan? Sure. Would it have been fun to take Trey Amos instead of Anthony Belton? Absolutely. You can go back. I would have loved Jerry Hughes instead of Brian Bulaga. Every single offensive lineman that's ever been taken, specifically in like the first 3 rounds or anything, right? You can point to almost every single one of them and be like, look at what player was on the board. Like, there was a really fun player. And at some point, you just have to take your medicine and say, you know what? Yeah, it'd be really fun to take Trey Amos here, but there are just not many humans that are made the way that Anthony Belton is made. And if we don't get beef on our offensive line, all of a sudden you end up being the Chicago Bears of 2024, where you've got all these fun little playmakers and toys and gadget players, and you can't protect for them. You end up with the Houston Texans of 2024. You've got all of these, this unbelievable quarterback and Nico Collins. And I get that Diggs and, Dell and all those guys ended up getting hurt, but you've got all these awesome weapons, no offensive line to protect for them. At some point, you have to eat your vegetables. At some point, you have to bite the bullet and just say, man, this sucks. I don't really want to spend a 2nd round pick here on Anthony Belton, but I have to realize, and I don't really want to spend a 1st round pick on Jordan Morgan. But if I don't do this, I'm going to end up with an offensive line that's just subpar, and you just can't survive in the NFL with that. So I get it. Would Trey Amos been a fun pick there? Sure. And as Green Bay in general had some really great success, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds with offensive linemen? Sure. But you can't always expect that. And if you want these big guys who can move, sometimes you got to spend a 1st round pick on a Jordan Morgan, a 2nd round pick on an Anthony Belton, a 4-year, $77 million deal on Aaron Banks, and go out and get those guys that there are just very few made of in just humanity, right? So I get there's always going to be somebody sexier out there in those scenarios, but it usually pays off more often than not to invest in the offensive line. It's one of the best things that you can invest in. And I get it's not always the sexiest thing, but it pays dividends in a huge, huge way. What's up, Tulio? The name of the Bengals beat writer sent some shivers down my spine. Way too close to the DC, whose name we do not mention. Fair enough, Tulio. I totally get that. Yeah, it'll be fun to see how Half weaponizes X to put others in the backfield to be in position to succeed. I have faith in Half weaponizing just about any at this point. He is a hell of a coach, hell of a coordinator. I think Packers fans should be very lucky that Jeff Hafley's in Green Bay. By the way, just even at practice and stuff, just a presence about the dude. he should get a head coaching job next year. Not necessarily advocating for it. I would like him to stay in Green Bay as long as possible. The teams that pass on him as a head coach for a while longer are making a big mistake, I think. I think he's going to be a hell of an NFL head coach. Cornelius Johnson, I remember him from Michigan with Ronnie Bell from the 49ers. Hopefully it works out for us. I would love that. McCole has already gone through some stuff. He fumbled a punt in the Super Bowl as a rookie. He felt awful right after. Mahomes even came to talk to him right after to cheer him up and ended up grabbing a walk-off touchdown in his last Super Bowl with the Chiefs. He's gone through that adversity for sure. He's got that veteran mentality. You can tell it. He is battle-tested, and he's ready to go and fight for that roster spot coming up in camp. You can tell he's hungry, and he's ready to go out and earn it. There's no question about it. Let's see. In the extremely remote situation where Goody and Jair wanted to resign, would Goody need to get the bonus off the books now rather than spread through next year? So Goody and Jair wanted to resign. Would Goody need? No, you wouldn't have needed to do that, Dwayne. You again could, but there would have been nothing that would have been needed as like a precursor to a future deal. So no, and again, I just really do not see that happening. Andy, are there any unsung heroes of really good teams in terms of players, coaches, or other staff? Best Packers channel on the net. I appreciate that. Unsung heroes of really good teams in terms of players, coaches, or other staff. Yeah. I think in a world in which we glorify almost everything, we don't talk about scouting staffs at all. And understandably so. We have no idea, right? We have no idea what area scout, national scout, VP of player personnel, whomever. We don't know which one of these guys initially showed, the Packers a specific prospect or went to bat for a specific guy. But the teams that are scouting players really, really well usually have an unbelievable scouting staff. Now, you look back at, some of the prime Green Bay Packers years where they were in peak draft and develop mode, and look at all the scouts that ended up, John Dorsey and John Schneider and Reggie McKenzie and, Brian Gutekunst and Elliot Wolf. And like, you just look around the league, and there have been so many of these GMs and top scouting personnel people that have worked with the Packers, and they had just this unbelievable staff that's helped them put together some of these teams. So yeah, that's the backbone of your team, and they deserve so much credit. Now, they deserve a lot of blame when things go bad too. And again, it's hard to say which scout is good, which scout is bad. Again, we don't have the all 22 of these guys, but your scouting staff is insanely important and really one of the lifebloods of your team that just really never gets any credit one way or the other. All right. Hendrickson has the ideal size, but Watt is actually better against the run. Yeah, I don't necessarily even disagree. I'm more worried about wearing down, of which one wears down quicker. And I think Watt might wear down a little bit quicker than what Hendrickson might. Health concerns are, to me, are the issue. Hendrickson might be lesser against the run, but he's been very available. Totally agreed. Jeff Halfley is cooking. Trust the man. Totally agree. Cooking reminds me of Ryan Poles. I hear that they let Poles cook too much, and he's usually buying the wrong ingredients. Anyway, Halfley cooked last year and should be better in year 2. Yeah, the Poles thing always is a little bit interesting from a Bears standpoint. Saw a tweet from a dude responding to the videos you put up in your tweet stream telling you to stop doing it. It's useless. I don't know you, but that rubbed me the wrong way. Thank you. Of the fans that don't live in Wisconsin and would love to see what you see on a regular basis. I appreciate your effort to produce content every day. That can't be easy. I appreciate that a ton. I, took it for, I didn't put any stock into it. Just like, I'm going to keep doing what I do, man. It's working out pretty well for me. So I'm sorry that you didn't like a Marshawn Lloyd running video, but I posted it. Deal with it. You can unfollow me if you want, but some people just like to complain about everything no matter what. One of my, I won't say the company name or anything like that, but I worked for a company that every year for all people, okay, not just customers, but for anyone in the area that wanted to come, put on a huge event that had free food and prizes and all this stuff for everyone. They did it all throughout the state of Wisconsin, and it was totally free. There was literally, and I mean, there's literally no catch. You if you just wanted to show up every single day that these were going on and get a free sandwich and ice cream bar and soda and everything, chips, just go, show up. It's free. Just celebration event. And that you got all of it for free. For a while, this is years ago now, years and years ago, I worked in customer service. You would be stunned, and I mean stunned, at the people that would call up and complain about they didn't like the food, or that last year the ice cream bars were a little bit bigger, or like just the most unbelievable stuff. Like totally free, Company didn't have to do it. It was completely out of their own pocket. There was no catch whatsoever. And yet people would call up and complain because they didn't like the specific bread that the subs were on or something. It would be like, I don't know what to tell you. These were totally free. I'm like, would you like your money back? I would be happy to give you your money back. It was just remarkable. One thing that I will tell you, everyone should have to spend, it should be a mandatory requirement that everyone has to spend at least like 3 months of their life early on in their life working in customer service or like the food industry, retail, whatever, to have to deal with people, because I think it would make everyone realize how much it is a pain to work with people that just complain about stuff every single day. And you learn so much of like just how to deal with it, how to manage it, how to change expectations, etc. So I think it should almost be like a mandatory course in life of you've got to go work for customer service for 3 months of your life. And then once you're done with that, you can graduate onto whatever next. But you learn a lot about people in a job like that. That's for sure. I can see Isaiah Simmons winning the third linebacker spot. Sam or Will, listening to him explain himself, trying to lead 3 or 4 different positions probably is hard. Yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what he can do this upcoming season. To me, Philly should be the only one above Green Bay for the NFC, but honestly, you could flip a coin and take any of the top few and they could do it. I think that's what makes this season really fun coming up. And of course, injuries and attrition is going to play a huge role in this. There's always 3 to 4 teams that just get the snake bits, team of death where just everyone's hurt. You've got to avoid that because otherwise you're just in no man's land. So hopefully Green Bay can avoid the injury curse and go out and be competitive this year. They should be. I'm really excited for it, but it should be a really fun NFC in totality. Jake, thanks for the birthday wishes for my son. Appreciate that. Thank you on behalf of the fans. You're welcome. I'm taking a W against the Kittens in week 1. The rest of the season, I'll just wait and see. All right, that's fair. If Tom is excellent, does his size really matter? No, it doesn't. But I do think it's intriguing nonetheless. And like I said, I'll talk about it a little bit more coming up. But I think the most likely scenario is that Tom is back if anyone's overly concerned about this. But I do think it's an interesting conversation. Not my birthday, but it is my son's birthday, Elijah, Alijah, by the way. And he is 8 years old today. So thank you very much for that, Sam, though. Appreciate that, Ben. JR, like that X that doesn't move on. Yeah, he'll move on quick enough. That's for sure. Is it true that Hobbs has only played like 5 more games than Jair in the last 3 years? I read that somewhere. If it's not that, it's pretty close. He's been pretty banged up. So Nate Hobbs has played over the last 3 seasons. 24, 35 games in the regular season. Jair has played 30. So yeah, 5-game difference. 30 games for Jair, 35 for Hobbs. If you want to feel a little bit better about it, Hobbs has played 18 over the last 2 years. I guess never mind. Jair's played 14. So I take it back. Yeah, Hobbs has been definitely beat up as well. So sorry. No, wait. I take that back. All right, hold on. So 35 games for Hobbs over the last 3 years. 35 for Hobbs. Okay, yep, 30 for Jair. 14 for Jair and 24 for Hobbs over the last 2. So he's played 10 more games over the last 2 years than Jair. So it's a little bit better over a 2-year period of time, but over a 3-year period of time, yes, it's only a 5-game difference. And he's had injury issues pretty much every single year of his career. So last week for Elijah was his friend's birthday party. Today we got him all of his presents. We went and got ice cream, and he got to choose where we wanted to go for lunch today. And then we're going to his friend's house tonight. And I thought there was one other thing too, but yeah, we're definitely celebrating it as much as we possibly can. Might be a dumb question. Is it possible we pay to the full balance for Alexander so we could re-sign him? No, there would have been no benefit in doing that either that way. It would have been the same scenario that we talked about before. And like I said, I think there's a 0.0% chance that they re-sign him. Healthy Jair was our best corner since Woodson and Al Harris. I would definitely agree with that. Agreed, but since his shoulder injury, he's left a lot to be desired in run support and tackling after the wide receiver makes the catch. I would also very much agree with that. But prime Jair was freaking awesome. I think we can all agree in that. Can we post minicamp 53-man roster prediction? I'll probably do one of those soon, for sure. I'll definitely do one of those soon. If Isaiah Simmons does great, and with Malik Willis doing great, do you think players who have not looked well in other organizations will turn to Green Bay as a possible solution, help grow them? Certainly possible. Obviously, it takes two to tango, and Green Bay has to have interest as well. But I do think there's already a lot of agents and especially agents that are aware of Green Bay. Being able to like rehabilitate a player, Rasul Douglas, Devondre Campbell, Keyshawn Nixon. There's been multiple, right? So I think agents are aware of that. But yeah, the more that you can do that, the more players like that are definitely going to want to come to Green Bay. No question about it. Sitting in the second row behind the Packers bench in Washington, the game Jermichael was injured, I was there as well, Mike McGee. I was at that same exact game in Washington. His mom was on my flight back to Chicago, and she was very optimistic he would be fine. Sadly, he was not. Yeah, that was a very big bummer, that injury with Finley. Valentine may be our cornerback one. I think he's better than Nixon, honestly. Don't think it's going to matter. What I mean is that all those guys are going to play a bunch. They're all going to be out there. There's not really any such thing as a cornerback one in this specific defense. So you might say that Valentine ends up being the best corner, which sure, possibly. But I think all three of those guys are going to play quite a bit beyond the field. And whoever ends up being great. We'll have to wait and see. But I really do like Carrington Valentine, and I'm excited for year 3. Yeah, Nick Collins was a tough one. Go Pack, go to you as well, Chris. Running back 2, I'm going to say is Marshawn Lloyd. I do think he gets into that and gets the second most carries in week 2. And I think Emmanuel Wilson has a shot as well. And I do think Chris Brooks could have a role, but I think it's going to be interesting how that plays out. I think any of the 3 could be running back 2 behind Josh. Marshawn makes the team no matter what. And then it depends on if you keep 3 running backs or 4 running backs, if Brooks or Wilson ends up getting cut. Yeah, I have Lloyd as well. My favorite UDFA through minicamp. Well, Stackhouse, we haven't been able to see. Baldwin's been at safety. Let's see. I'm just going to go El Gersma. Screw it. I was going to look up all the different ones, but I'm going El Gersma. Those couple throws that he had the other day, I'm still buzzing about it. So I'm going El Gersma. Chris Brooks is really good, guys. Chris Brooks has a real legitimate chance to make this team. And every team has a Chris Brooks. Somebody who can pass protect, run block, catch the ball to the backfield, run the ball, play special teams. Every team has one. I would cut Chris Brooks on your 53-man roster prediction at your own peril. I'm not saying he's a lock, but he's going to have a really, really good chance to make this team. And I do think he does keep 4 running backs. I just appreciate Elton for being able to go to the toe with Aaron Donald for any length of time. Yeah, listen, that was one of the awesome Elton Jenkins moments. No question about it. Really excited about this year. I feel everyone has the same edge in their attitude. Have you noticed it too? Nobody seems happy about last year, even the new guys on the team. It does seem like a very hungry team. Very hungry team. I love the way that they're playing. I love the energy, and excited for training camp to get started. Let's see. Not my birthday, but my son Elijah's birthday, but I still appreciate it nonetheless, Alex. Favorite UDFA right now? Yeah, again, I'm going to go El Gersma. But again, a lot of these guys that were UDFAs were in the trenches, right? So like Brant Banks, Tyler Cooper, JJ Lippy, we didn't really get to see. Nasir Stackhouse, we didn't get to see. Sam Brown's intriguing, but had quite a few drops. I loved El Gersma. White and Johnson, again, running game is not really existent. Jamon Johnson had 1 interception on a fake field goal. Tyron Herring, I didn't really notice. And Kazir Brown and Jonathan Baldwin were at safety. So nothing as of yet. But again, a lot of those key ones weren't really in positions to play much. Also, remember when they went into team, a lot of times there were the 1s and the 2s. And I was watching the 1s and all those guys were down with the 2s. So I'm just going to go El Gersma by default at this point. All right, where do we leave off? Was voice to text message. Siri Auto corrected me to error. All good, my friend. Jenkins, a great pass protector, doesn't move people. There's times where I think he can. I think he's a solid run blocker. Maybe not, again, one of those dominant interior players, but still, he's very good in all phases. Chubb, if he can stay healthy with Mixon and Houston, is intriguing. Yeah, we'll see if Chubb has anything left. If so, then that's going to be a very interesting duo. Before rookie minicamp, you said you were most excited to watch Golden. I know camp didn't show much, but which new Packer are you most excited about now, rookie or otherwise? Definitely want to see more Nate Hobbs. I thought he came up with a couple of really nice plays. So definitely want to see more of him. I want to see more Banks. Of course, again, offensive line play, and he was injured too, but offensive line play, we didn't get to see a ton of. So I would probably say Hobbs and Golden are kind of the 2 at the top of my list going into training camp. What I want more than anything is for Jordan to tear it up in such a way that the rest of the league goes, oh, they really did it 3 times in a row. Just remember, Ben, that happened at the end of 2023. That was a legit thing, but from everyone. Bears fans were scared and talking about it. Mina Kimes, like everyone was on the same page. They did it again. And then 2024 was injury riddled. If he's healthy, don't be surprised if it happens again. He looks awesome so far, by the way. How Jordan's looked at mini camps, do you think he'll have a year closer to the end of 2023? Fingers crossed, Danny. Fingers crossed. I hope so. Only Jordan can know for sure or play that way for sure. But listen, he's a really talented guy, and I'm buzzing about what he can be in 2025. I'm not surprised so many miserable people in the world. Unfortunately, that is true. A lot of great people in the world too. And you guys are a great example of that. Do you see Lloyd getting many carries this year, or mainly the Josh Jacobs show again? I do think he's going to have a legitimate role. How many carries that equates to, and if he can stay healthy, that's another story. But I do think they will have a real legitimate role for Marshawn Lloyd in this offense. People bad, get a dog. I worked retail customer service for 10 years now. I work from home and barely like to leave the house. Understandable, Cody. My daughter's birthday is today. Not sure if your son's is today, but that's cool. It is. June 13th, 2017 was his birthday. So happy birthday to your daughter as well. That's awesome. Is Rasul Douglas a viable option now that Jaw's gone? I don't think so. Maybe towards the end of camp, if your corner situation's not looking great and he's still out there, but I don't think going into camp that they would do it. Not impossible, but I don't think so. I think Douglas, as much as I love hearing him talk, I think he's on the decline. Hasn't looked great in Buffalo. Yeah, he had a really rough year this past year. Not my birthday, but again, my son's birthday. Happy birthday, Pac-Man. Keep up the hustle, man. Little Pac-Man, future Pac-Man, future Pack-A-Day guy. I think Xavier's got him beat, my oldest, but we'll see if either of those take on the family business here at some point. Rooting for the Jets was disappointing. That was a difficult period, and I'm glad it's over. Yeah, Paulina, I get it. The whole Rodgers Jet situation did not go according to plan. We'll see how the Rodgers Steelers situation goes moving forward. I have a feeling they lowballed Jair. That is disrespectful. I don't know. I don't know that I necessarily agree. I get the sentiment. I really do. I just think it's a business, guys. I think we like to think of it as this like beautiful kumbaya. Everyone's getting along and everyone's, hugging it out at the end. I just think that this stuff all has to do with, dollars and cents. And it's not this perfect, beautiful world where everything works the way that we want it to. Personally, you can lowball Jair and Jair can come back and say, we want this. And maybe that's a high ball and that's disrespectful. I don't know. But I just think you go back and forth. You say, here's what we value Jair as. Jair says, here's what we think the value is. You're not on the same page. So you say, see you later. Go find it on the open market. And that's just the NFL. That's just business. I don't think it's anything disrespectful. I think each side has to do what's best interest of themselves. And we hate it as fans because we would love just the players that we love and the team that we love to coexist beautifully. Just doesn't work that way. And I think the sooner that we just kind of, learn to live with that aspect of it and not make it too much more than what it is, I think that's probably the best way to look at it. So I never blame the Packers for moving on from a player, cutting a player, lowballing a player. Goody's trying to do what he thinks is in the best interest of the Packers. Same way that I am not upset with Elton Jenkins. You could look at it and say, man, Elton Jenkins is under contract for 2 more years. Show up to minicamp, do your work. It's a business. I get that the Packers are going to cut people and lowball people. I get that players are going to sit out when they don't think that their contract is worthwhile. Just the world that we live in. Like it or love it, hate it, dislike it, whatever. Just have to sort of accept it. And I never have ill will towards the Packers for it. And I never have ill will towards the player for it. It's just each side are looking out for themselves. And that's just what you have to do in this business is how I read it. Keep hearing Willis has looked really sharp in minicamp. What do you think? I really liked what I've seen, and he certainly has taken a step getting to know this Matt LaFleur offense better. Remember, he didn't get to go through camp or really learn the offense and the installs and everything this past year because they didn't trade for him until the end of training camp when cutdown time was. So I think that whole offseason in LaFleur's offense has been very beneficial. What is the difference in traits for a guard versus a center? If you are saying generally not scheme dependent. Usually the guards are a little bit bigger. Usually the centers are a little bit more mobile. Intelligence is massive for the center because usually you're doing a lot of communication, cadence, checks at the line, identifying blitzers, defenders, which way you're sliding the line, depending on how much you're putting on the center's plate. But certainly intelligence, movement ability, and just, I think, a level of ruggedness and toughness, a little bit of leadership mentality as well, because you have to do a lot of that stuff. So, and again, guard, just depending on the offense, if you're a power team, if you're a zone team, But I think usually a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger is what you're looking at the guard position. But again, it can vary team by team, but those are just some of the more basic ones. Play with Marshawn often on Call of Duty. Man, am I excited to see him play. That's awesome. I love that. Thoughts on the expected new third helmet design this year? Charlie, I don't say this to poo-poo on your question or anything like that. There are very few things that I will say this about, but this is one of them. I do not care. I just do not care. I've said for a while, keep the green and gold classic the way that it is. Give me the white road jerseys. I think both of those are chef kiss perfect. Do not change them one iota. Anything that you want to do for 2 or 3 other jerseys through the course of the year, throwbacks, salute the troops, alternate uniforms, do not care. Go have fun, sell your merchandise, sell your jerseys, do what you need to do. No matter what you do, whether it's a throwback, whether it's a alternate jersey, somebody's going to love it. Somebody's going to hate it. I do not care. I care about who's on the field, and I want those traditional jerseys for home and away. No question about it. I don't want those to change at all. But whatever other marketing stuff and random jerseys you want to throw out there, be my guest. Does not bother me one iota. And that's one that I just can't find any reason to get into one way or the other. So go have your jersey and helmet fun, and I'll be here just watching the games. Wade, thank you so much for that. I know you love El Gersma, Andy. What would you say are the odds the Packers trade Willis before his contract is up? 10%. I don't think there's going to be anything that happens in this offseason. I think the only way that you would get there is, first of all, if Willis tore it up in let me rephrase this. If Willis just went God mode, okay, where he legitimately looks like, a top 10 quarterback in the NFL or something in preseason, which in and of itself is almost impossible to do because it's preseason, right? Even if he did that, you would take it with a grain of salt because it's preseason. But if you went God mode and some team came calling and you could get it now before he probably leaves next offseason in free agency, maybe a strong chance. Maybe you get their backup quarterback in return and pick up a 2nd or 3rd round pick or something. That would be option one. I don't think the odds of that are great. There's just not many teams that need a quarterback at this point in time. Everyone's got their starters, right? Even New Orleans has options at quarterback. So I don't think that's going to happen. The only other way that I would get there is you're midway through the season. Somehow Green Bay is chilling at, 2-7 or whatever it is at the trade deadline, completely unexpectedly, just having a really bad season. Some team's quarterback goes down and they're willing to offer a 3rd round pick, 4th round pick for Malik Willis. He's going to leave in free agency next year anyway, and you take it at that point in time. So hopefully that doesn't come to fruition either. I think it's very, very unlikely, but maybe not quite impossible. Do you think Goody is on the hot seat if they go 7-10 or worse? No. 0-17, 1-16, 2-15. Those he is legitimately going to be on the hot seat going into next year. 0-17. It's probably LaFleur that is going to feel that before Goody. I think they probably let LaFleur go in that situation before they would let Goody go. I don't know that there's anything that would get Goody fired for this upcoming season. On the hot seat next year, sure. They're 2-15 or below. That could theoretically be the case where he gets on the hot seat. I don't think Goody or Matt are anywhere near hot seat material at the moment. All right, friends, that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you guys a ton. I'll be back next week with another happy hour. We'll probably just do 1 a week happy hours now. And of course, the members Q&A as well. If you've not signed up for memberships yet, make sure to do so. Tomorrow we'll be going to, I think we're going to go over the winners and losers of Packers minicamp and OTAs. So that's the plan for tomorrow's episode. I will see you guys then. Enjoy your Friday night. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.